Shalom. This is number 14 in the series of videos about terms for our Introduction to Judaism long-term conversion class. This is on the subject of Israel. So spiritual Zionism is the first term. That is, there's many different ideas that went into creating the state of Israel, different philosophical views of what Israel should be and why it should be. Spiritual Zionism might be viewed as that of Echad Ha'am, a great secular cultural writer who saw Israel as a central spiritual and cultural place of the Jewish people. Political Zionism, that would be associated with people like Theodor Herzl, who believed that the only solution to the anti-Semitism of Europe, based on the Dreyfus Affair, which was a high-ranking French Jewish soldier who was convicted falsely of treason because of anti-Semitism, the only solution to anti-Semitism, he believed, was the state of Israel, a Jewish independent state. Aliyah, the next term. That is the term for either having an honor in the synagogue, but in this context, moving to Israel. Palestinian or Palestine. That's actually not a modern term. It's a term that the Romans gave to the area after it was called Judea, and the Jews of that for thousands of years were called Palestine Jews. So to say the Palestinian people today is simply to borrow an old Roman term. There were really no people historically that were called the Palestinian people. World Zionist Congress, that Theodor Herzl and Chaim Weizmann organized the first Zionist Congress in 1897 in Basel, Switzerland, and said that there should be a Jewish state, and it was predicted at that point 50 years later, and exactly 50 years later, the UN voted to partition Palestine. Balfour Declaration. There was a Lord Balfour in Britain which controlled Palestine until after the Turks and before the Jews, who in the 20s issued a British foreign policy white paper, they called it, saying that Jewish people had a right to a homeland, which is a very important document in getting the world ready for the Jewish state. The British Mandate. Well, the Brits, by the world, had the control over the land until they vacated after the UN partition in 1947. Chaim Weizmann. He was one of the great early Zionist leaders and president of Israel, along with Theodor Herzl, called the First Zionist Congress. Jewish Agency. That is a kind of quasi-political, quasi-governmental organization which funnels funds from Israel and the world and helps Israel with many important activities that are non-government finance, education and absorption. Exodus. Well, the main exodus, of course, was slavery from Egypt, but in this context, we're talking about a novel by Leon Uris based on a circumstance of a ship filled with Holocaust refugees trying to come to Israel, and the British said it was illegal and tried to block all ships coming, and there's a famous book and movie about the Exodus. Excuse me. The UN Partition Plan. The United Nations in 1947 voted to divide the land between two states, Jewish and Arab, and the Jews accepted it, the Arabs didn't, and 5 Arab nations invaded and tried to kill the 650,000 Jews that were there. They held them off miraculously and established a Jewish state. If only the Arabs had accepted that, a lot of these problems that the Palestinians have caused would not exist today. And Israel's hoping that they'll have a peace partner who they can trust to be able to finally create that Palestinian state. Jordan controlled that territory called the West Bank from 1947 to 1948 to 1967. Could have created a Palestinian state that whole time. They didn't. Kept the people in camps. David Ben-Gurion, the first prime minister of Israel. May 14th, 1948. That date is significant because it's the English date of when the British pulled out and Israel, the Declaration of Independence. Kibbutz is the name of, it used to be a socialist collective of people who lived. It started out as kind of border settlements. People lived in sort of they lived in their, families in their own apartment. The kids often lived in groups. Everybody did work assigned by the kibbutz. Today people enjoy kibbutzim, but they're much less socialistic. But a lot of the leaders of Israel have come out of the kibbutz movement. The major cities, Tel Aviv, is the kind of business capital. Haifa, of course, Jerusalem is the capital of Israel and the holiest city. Although the world doesn't recognize Jerusalem as the capital, it's the only country in the world where it's declared its capital is Jerusalem. The United States doesn't recognize the capital declared by that country. It's disgusting, in my opinion. Holy places. And back on major cities, of course, there are many other important cities: Safat, Tiberias, Hebron, Beersheba, many other cities. Holy places. Well, the holiest place for the Jews is the Old City and the Western Wall and the Holy Temple Mount. Other places too, like the tomb of Rachel, tomb of Joseph. Hebron has the burial place of many of the earliest biblical characters. Tzfat, the holy city. Hebron's the holy city. AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. I have a video on that. Very important organization. It's the official lobby for the state of Israel in the United States. It does very important holy work in helping defend Israel against its anti-Semitic critics. Israel bonds Israel is the number 2 country in the world selling foreign bonds after the United States. It's a way that you can support Israel and become a partner with Israel. It funds governmental activities, so every bond you buy helps build a road in Israel, a hospital in Israel, any public funds used. JUF is the Jewish United Fund. There's other names for it in other cities. JUF is the Chicago name. It's a tzedakah charity collective where everybody piles their money together. Then it's distributed both for local charitable Jewish needs and internationally to the Joint Distribution Committee to help world Jewry and to help Israel fund non-governmental programs. The JNF, Jewish National Fund, we all know it from buying the land of Israel from absentee landlords, also called Karen Kayemet LiYisrael. The Jewish National Fund then embarked on planting hundreds of millions of trees because the Turks had really denuded the land when they were there. And now JNF, Jewish National Fund, is working on water reclamation projects and land use. Finally, the Knesset has 120 members. It's the official government of Israel. 120 is based on the number of judges that used to sit in the ancient Sanhedrin. So those are the terms for session 14 on Israel.